Loading.
It's streaming now live on Facebook.
Go ahead.
Senator Sanders, you want to kick off the meeting with opening remarks for 3 minutes?
Absolutely, absolutely. Good morning, all. A late good morning to some, but a good morning to all. One of the premier singers in this world, and that is, of course, Beyonce, made a record, and in it she said, if you love me, you should put a ring on it. Well, I'm saying that since we love the people, let's put a stamp on it. The stamp of approval of the United States in this sense is the U.S. mail. Yes, the U.S. mail, the one that seems to be berated by so many, but is the most dependable organ of government, one of them that we have. And we are trying to ensure that the vote, which even today we're hearing that had been attacked by 2 countries, one of them Russia, that the vote is as pure and as positive as we possibly can. We need to not just send people a voting ballot, but we need to put a stamp so that they can put it back into mailbox and send it back to us. Now, on one hand, that's so simple that you're saying, well, why isn't this done already? Those of you who remember paying your bills by mail, and that doesn't include my assembly people, they were too young. But for the rest of us who remember paying our bills by mail, how much easier it was when the bill came with a stamped self-addressed envelope. No fuss, no muss. We wrote the check, we put it in the mailbox, and the world was a better place. Well, why don't we do that for the ballot? Why don't we make sure that that happens? Voting is one of the most basic fundamental rights afforded to a citizen in a democracy. And there are many reasons why people are unable to go to their polling places on election day, whether it's physical or in this day and age of COVID-19, personal. We don't charge a price anymore to vote at the polling place. And voting absentee shouldn't cost the voter either. There used to be a time when we charged a price, and my people had to go through that, and we struck that down as wrong. If it was wrong in the South, let's not take a watered down version of that up here. This bill would require that all absentee ballots delivered to qualified voters come with a prepaid envelope so that no one is personally burdened to cast their votes. During the COVID-19 pandemic, voting absenteeism has become important, that we need to make sure that it doesn't happen. A record number of absentee ballots have been issued in New York State this year. Absentee ballots provide an alternative to the polling site for those concerned with contracting COVID-19. All right, my friends, you're going to hear from better people than I who are about to come in and say these things. I just like everyone to know that we have 9 co-sponsors, not in the assembly, in the Senate, 19 assembly co-sponsors, and we are really moving ahead here. And with that in mind, I want to bring my fellow assembly person, Jeff Dinowitz, who's carrying it, I believe, in the assembly, and he is going to give a brief explanation of the vote. He's too young to remember voting by mail, but that's all right. Assembly Member Dinowitz, good to see you aboard.
Good to see you. Unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember voting by Pony Express. I thank everybody for joining us today. We are concerned about making sure that everybody can vote, that everybody has an easy time voting, and that people participate in our democracy. 4 years ago, a bunch of people in my district emailed, called us complaining about the absentee ballots, about do they have to put a stamp on, how many stamps do they have to put on. People were confused. And of course, 4 years ago, we had a good turnout, and suddenly a light lit up. And I said, why do people have to put any stamp on the absentee ballot return envelope? So 3 years ago, I introduced this legislation, and I am grateful that Senator Sanders is carrying this bill in the Senate, and I'm hoping that we can make this into law. This year, because we pushed on the bill, we didn't get the bill passed, but the governor did issue an executive order for the primary mandating that when the absentee ballots themselves are sent out by the various boards of elections, that they include a postage paid envelope. And they did. But that's not what happened for this general election. So once again, people have to, put their stamps on. And again, we were flooded with calls. Do I have to put a stamp on? I didn't have to do it for the primary. How many stamps do I have to put on? We don't need any confusion. We have enough confusion as it is. And we've made so many reforms. I mean, this year alone, my bill, which became law for what amounts to no excuse absentee balloting because of COVID, certainly made it easier for people to vote by allowing anybody to get an absentee ballot mailed to them by the Board of Elections. So this year, we want to take the next logical step. You may say, well, a stamp or 2 stamps, it's not a lot of money. You know what? Any amount of money, even if it's a penny, to me is a poll tax, a remnant of a very dark era, and we should not be allowing that to happen now or in the future. We have to undo that. This bill will ensure that the Board of Elections, when they send out the absentee ballots, will send out a prepaid envelope. There was some confusion with the Board of Elections about that this year. So the Assembly and the Senate passed a bill regarding postmarks on the prepaid envelopes, and I'm hoping to expand that legislation even further. But we have to do everything we can to make voting as easy, as simple as possible. It should be as accessible to everybody. Nobody should miss a vote for any reason whatsoever. So I'm hopeful that this bill will become law in the near future. And I'm thankful to my colleagues both in the Assembly and the Senate, as well as the advocates who are here for supporting this. And now we got to make sure that this happens. Thank you.
Well put, sir. As my people were stopped from voting by poll taxes and other methods. So this is personal. So I know that we should not have anything standing in our way, and we're grateful to the advocates and others who are here. But speaking of advocates, we have been joined by one of the greatest advocates for voting. And of course, I'm speaking about the president of the New York State NAACP conference, Dr. Hazel Dukes, a friend of mine. Doctor, I believe that you're on the line. Is there a doctor in the house?
Yes, I am. I'm here. And first, let me say congratulations and thanks to both of you for this. You're right, Senator Sanders. Before you got elected, you and I have been on the battlefield for justice and equality. I was so pleased that we finally in New York came to light. We'll have early voting. Both of you are absolutely correct. This is voter suppression. Anytime, anything that we put in the way that do not encourage citizens to participate in democracy, that's voter suppression. You're absolutely right. We should have, for the primary, I live in Lenox Terrace here in the heart of Harlem. We have many people in my building who are disabled, and so we decided, we have floor captains here. We decided to visit those persons who had aides around the clock to say, do you want us to, you apply for your absentee ballot, and we will get them to the respective Board of Elections. And so we did that in my building. We've asked all of our tenants, leaders, the president of Lenox Terrace Association, we've asked him to do the same thing. But you're right. Why is it that we can't get a stamp on for the return. I mean, if you are disabled, and some people, you know, with the food security and all the problems that we've had from COVID-19, we should be doing that. But we have been elected to help with our seniors and some people who just don't want to go outside. So you have the full support of the NAACP New York State Conference. That's from Niagara Falls to Eastern Long Island and all between. So many of your members, Ann Kaplan, I will be with her next Wednesday or Thursday. She's been very helpful with our Westbury NAACP. We know we got good support up in the Bronx, and most certainly in Queens, we will be talking to the Assembly people as well as the Senate. And I'm sure we'll get this bill passed. It's the right thing. It's the right time.
I take great comfort that the president has spoken. And yes, it is true that we have been on so many battlefields. We're probably starting to go over them again, but that's all right. We'll keep going over them until they get it right. And speaking of getting it right, we have a senator who is no stranger to not only being on the right side of history, but being on the right side of this issue. A senator who has spoken for justice in many different places, from one end of the country to the next, and now has gone to that far distant land, Far Rockaway, to address all of you. I'm speaking about Senator Kevin Parker.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate the generous introduction. Again, I'm State Senator Kevin Parker. I represent the 21st District in Brooklyn, which is Flatbush and East Flatbush, Midwood, Ditmas Park, Windsor Terrace, and Park Slope. I am the chairman of the Energy and Telecommunications Committee, as well as the Majority Whip in the New York State Senate. And let me begin by just thanking my colleagues in government, both Senator James Sanders, as well as Assemblyman Dinowitz, for their leadership on this important issue. And let me acknowledge my president. Some of you recognize a president in Washington, D.C. I only recognize my president, Hazel Dukes, the president of NAACP. I'm a Gold Life member and have appreciated her leadership and look forward to continuing to fight with her for all of the people of our great state. As you all know, voting is the cornerstone of American democracy. And as my colleagues have said, and as you heard Hazel Dukes indicate, there's no reason that we should have a virtual poll tax in the state of New York, period. We should be making the franchise as accessible as possible. Not providing postage is a hindrance and a deterrent for many voters across our great state. There's no reason to do it. We should pass this legislation post haste, and we should make sure that people have the ability to vote without having to come out of their pocket. And so again, I want to thank my colleagues. I want to thank everybody who's joined us on this call. And I look forward to working with the legislature and having the governor sign this bill as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And the next speaker is an assemblywoman who is just young enough. I'm sure she just started voting recently, but that's all right. She had made an incredible impact, not only in Albany, but down in every place of this state. When you speak of people who have been fighting the good cause, morning, noon, and night, you have to speak of Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal. So I could continue to speak for her, but she would correct me and say no one speaks for her as she does. So without further ado, Assembly Member Rosenthal.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Sanders and Assembly Member Dinowitz. Senator Sanders and I have other voting and other legislation together that I hope we will get to pass next session. But I'm very happy to be here as a co-sponsor of this vital piece of legislation. Now, we all talk about how the right to vote is so important. And in fact, it is the cornerstone of democracy. And it's something that women and people of color only got recently, which is hard to believe considering the activism today. But really, not till 64 was the poll tax abolished. as the 24th Amendment, yet this example is an example of a poll tax in essence. A lot of people emailed, called my office, said, I'm confused. I voted in June by absentee with postage paid. Now my envelope doesn't say that. What do I do? Do I put on one stamp? I see people like, I waited and it should be 2 stamps. Others said, just send it and the postage will be charged to the Board of Elections. You know what? There is no need for this kind of confusion. 17 states already have boards of elections require return postage guaranteed envelopes. And it's time that New York State be added to this list. You know, when we hear of other states trying to suppress the vote by allowing only one ballot box per county for people to deposit their ballots, or when we hear 4, 5, 6 hour lines in states like Georgia, we should be proud of what we do here in New York. However, we're not all the way there yet. And one step to ensure universal suffrage, true suffrage, is by making the return envelope for general elections, for all elections, postage paid. And so I'm happy to be here with my illustrious colleagues and advocates to push for this important legislation.
Thank you kindly. I'm just so honored that Assemblymember Dinowitz picked up on this travesty and saw that such a small thing could stand in the way of democracy. So I'm really honored that he picked up on this and that all of us, as soon as he put out the word, it's not hard to you didn't have a hard sell here, Assembly member, when you speak of making sure that the people of New York State have every ability to express their wishes and discontent if need be. Now, as an elected person, that's a two-edged sword. That could go either way, but you know what? It's more important that it's done. And we leave that to the will of the people. But even if we chose not to, we have great activists. Get ready, Perry. We have great activists who are here watching. They'll stand with us when we're right. They'll stand somewhere else if we're not right. But I'm so glad that we stand together right now. And I'm speaking of Perry Grossman, who is a senior state attorney of the Voting Rights Project of the New York Civil Liberties Union. And he is no stranger to fighting the good fight. Mr. Grossman, good to have you here, sir.
Oh, thanks so much, Senator Sanders, and also thanks to Senator Parker and to Assembly members Rosenthal and Dinowitz for this bill and for inviting us here today at a time when I and my colleagues at the ACLU are fighting for voting rights around the country and frankly facing so much pushback in the federal courts. I'm encouraged to see this bill. It's poised to expand voting rights for New Yorkers. It may seem small, but it's very important. When voting by mail is the only way for some people to vote safely, the price of postage is, as a lot of folks have already said, a poll tax. Especially at a time when so many New Yorkers are hurting financially due to the pandemic. Nobody should be forced to choose between spending a penny on food, shelter, childcare, or medical care, and exercising their right to vote. The bill is also important for alleviating confusion over how much it costs to mail a ballot. As both Assemblymember Dinowitz and Assemblymember Rosenthal noted, we've heard a lot of conflicting reports, and there's no reason for that. This bill is going to make sure that no one has to worry about whether they need 1 stamp or 2 stamps or any stamps. They're going to be able to mail their ballot, efficiently and with confidence. And even outside the pandemic, we are seeing a national trend towards increased voting by mail. It is convenient, it is safe, it is secure, it saves folks the time and the cost of getting to the polls. It reduces lines and crowds at polling places. When New York State finally and permanently puts no excuse absentee balloting in our state constitution, this bill will expand access to the franchise for the long term. But I also want to make an important point that this bill is important not just because it's going to expand access to the right to vote in New York, which it will. It's also going to help fight voter suppression in other states. To be perfectly frank, New York has an archaic system of voting in elections. It is rooted in the suppression of votes by people of color, immigrants, and the poor. When other states like Ohio and North Carolina have wanted to justify their voter suppression laws, they've pointed to voter suppression laws in New York. And we have seen the legislature make progress in the last 2 years, but we've got a long way to go. It's still much harder to register to vote and to vote by mail in New York than it should be. And when New York expands access to the franchise, other states will follow suit. The NYCLU, we are proud to support this bill. We hope it marks continued dedication on the part of the legislature towards vindicating the right to vote, which will hopefully include the passage of the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act of New York, which will be the nation's strongest and most comprehensive state voting rights act. When we've got the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, threatening to keep rolling back voting rights, and particularly the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which is the crown jewel of the federal civil rights laws, New York can and must show leadership on this issue. And I'm so proud to be a part of this press conference with legislators who are willing to step up and show that leadership. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Dukes, one of our great leaders, Fannie Lou Hamer, spoke about that she wasn't going backwards. She said that if she struggles and if she falls, she's actually going to fall forward. And that's what we're going to do. We're not going to fall, but we will move forward. Now,
Absolutely.
Dr. Dukes can actually tell you that all politics is local. And
That's right.
but our next speaker will say it in her own way, because she is the president of the Jamaica NAACP. And everyone knows not only is all politics local, but heck, she's my local, and I better do right by her, or else I'll be on the wrong side of the barricade, and that's not a good place to be. I'm speaking about Candice Price Modeste, and
Absolutely.
she is going to focus on, is this always a deliberate thing, or can this be a voter suppression? Does it have to be deliberate? But Candice, I'm not going to put words in your mouth because you wouldn't say them anyway. Give us the words that you would say. A pleasure, Madam President.
So thank you so much for having me, Senator Sanders. I'm so grateful to be participating in this gathering today to show my support for this effort and for this legislation. So I appreciate the proactive steps that you, Senator, Assemblymember Dinowitz, Assemblymember Rosenthal, Senator Parker, and all of our legislators are taking to close some gaps, not only in critical service delivery, but in ensuring that the public has no obstacles to voting, not fewer, but no obstacles whatsoever. So I'm sure that some of our good government partners may be balking at the need for this particular bill, perhaps citing it as another example of over legislating. But what we're really talking about is our most basic right as Americans, the right to vote. And when we're talking about the right to vote, I mean, is that even a discussion or debate that needs to be had? Are we not to commend our elected officials, those who we entrust to use their voice and their vote to bring about change for our communities, for doing just that, for bringing to light system failures and then offering a means to correct them, right? So I think this bill is a perfect example of how to address persistent structural voter suppression, right? So it's going to serve as a reminder that voter suppression does not have to be intentional, okay? It does not have to be blatant and in your face. It doesn't even have to have racial or cultural or religious implications. The focus, though, what it will do is result in preventing all eligible voters to exercise their franchise. And for some, as previously mentioned, even pose a financial barrier. So ultimately, we're looking at the result, right? And that result is that it's going to deter people from either voting by mail or voting, period. And that's not what we want. And so with each passing election, we're all learning more about how we can better serve our residents of this city and this state. And again, I do want to commend our partners in government for their swift action on this effort and encourage others to do the same. Every little bit helps, and ultimately our democracy is stronger when more of us can participate. So we're going to do what we can to expand and protect the electorate. And I'm confident that once this bill is passed in both houses, the governor will sign it into law. And obviously, should there be any delay in him doing so, I and my colleagues in the NAACP across the state will remind him of his duty to do so. Thank you all.
Senator
Madam
Sanders,
Dukes. Yes,
I want
ma'am.
you to know that President Modis is on our resolutions committee, and this will come before us in January. It will be our items on our 2021 legislative agenda, and I'm sure it's going to pass 100% at our meeting in January. She will be carrying this for us as a member of the resolution committee.
Outstanding, Madam President. Outstanding, Madam President. I know that when the NAACP gets its hands on something, it's usually just a matter of time before it's done. And the other side should get to know that quickly so that we all can be on the right side of history. But I have a surprise guest for us. Once this young man heard that there was an issue of justice, he immediately came down and said that he wanted to be on the right side too. And of course, I'm speaking about a young man who will make his self known in Albany and at the assembly level in just a few days. And I'm speaking about the ubiquitous Khalil Anderson, assembly member elect. Khalil, would you be kind enough to speak to us?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, and late morning, really. I'm honored that State Senator Sanders had me on this press conference today to talk about, a issue regarding our abilities to be able to vote, voting by mail in this moment. Now, I know Senator was joking earlier about my future colleague, Assemblywoman Rosenthal and Assemblymember Dinowitz, being too young to know about voting by mail, but I actually am. And this is something that's unprecedented for folks coming up in this moment, such as myself, but we need to make sure that we do it right. We need to make sure that, sorry. You can continue or you can take. Yeah, why don't I, because of sound.
You want to get off mute, Assembly Member elect.
Much better, much better. In this moment when folks are concerned about their health, when the folks are concerned about their safety, we have to make sure that we get voting by mail right. And part of how we do that is making sure that folks have postage and people are not running around trying to figure out if they have enough stamps or not. We should be doing that as the legislature. While I'm not in the body yet, this is something that we're going to, certainly support and fight hard for, not just for this election, but future elections. This is something that we already should have done. It's one of those nonsense things that should already be in place, but we have to work hard to say that it's important. It's like saying the sky is blue. We already know, but we have to make it a reality in the legislature because that's a real thing. But I want to thank Senator Sanders for putting together this press conference, Senator Parker, the illustrious Dr. Hazel Dukes. Also, I am a member of the Far Rockaway NAACP branch, so NAACP all the way. I want to thank Candace for also speaking to this very important issue of my colleagues in the Assembly. But let's just keep the fight up, not just during this moment, but going forward, so that we don't run into these hiccups around voting. Folks should be able to vote early. Folks should be able to vote by mail or on election day, whatever they feel comfortable, whatever they feel is safe. And part of making sure that this is a safe process is making sure we have stamps for these folks. So thank you very much, Senator Sanders. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, we have heard it, and the people have spoken. I'm going to see if there are any, and Ivan, I'm going to let you read if there are any questions from the press or anyone else, sir.
Good morning, all. Good morning, Senator. Currently, we just have comments, but there are no questions, but we are getting comments from residents who is asking that this bill needs to be passed. We the people, and Assemblyman member Clive Vanell has also joined us as well. He's on Facebook Live, unfortunately. But we have no questions at this time, Your Honor.
If the Assemblyman Clive Vernell were here, I would give him a chance to speak. If there is any way he can do that, we would be delighted. But I will channel my inner Clyde Vernell and say that he absolutely supports this. And wait, he also feels that it's ridiculous that we would let such a small amount of money, I'm channeling him, small amount of money keep us from this. He said something else, but I can't repeat those things. Assembly Member Dinowitz, we're about to end soon, sir, and you have carried this for the longest and fought the hardest, and there's no better person. I will let you have to give us our benediction, sir.
It is really very exciting. The work that we have done in the legislature these past couple of years have really changed things. All the reforms that we passed, no excuse absentee balloting, which is going to become a reality at the beginning of 2022. Just on so many different levels. We've opened up the voting process, but we still have more work to do. And this is just one small example of it. We have a number of other things we have to do, but I know that all of us working together as legislators, as advocates, we're going to get this done because we've seen what we can get done, and we therefore know what we can do in the future. And I think if there is anything that has given all of us the incentive to make sure that our democracy functions and works the way it should, it's the current and soon to be former occupant of the White House. So again, to everybody, thank you all so much, and I look forward to success on this bill and a lot of other bills.
Assembly Member, you said it well. I will just leave us with a commercial. At 3 o'clock today, we're going to have a faith-based leadership initiative called Pandemic Grief and Trauma Toolkit discussion. That's at 3 o'clock on, let's see if I can get the next one free. All right, these papers, love this stuff. I'm voting early, and I'm encouraging everyone to join me at 10 o'clock on October 26th. I will be at the Rockaway YMCA, and I'm voting early. And on the same 11 o'clock on October 26th, we are doing a homeowner and renter benefit presentation. And then if that's not enough, last but never least, on October the 28th, we are doing a back to school post-COVID-19. Schools reopened, then closed. Now they're reopening again. We're gonna have a bunch of people to help us explain what does this mean? Who can keep up with this? Are we open, closed, closed, open? Are we yellow, red, green? I don't know. Why don't you come here on October 28th and we'll figure it out together. To all of my colleagues who are on the line, thank you very much for what you've done for our champion, Assembly Member Dinowitz. Keep doing what you're doing. We're joining you, sir. And to all my fellow advocates, my goodness, this must be a great day where you're seeing a lot of the stuff that you guys have fought for years come to pass. To the people as a whole, this is your moment. This is your democracy. Come out on November the 3rd and vote any way you wish, but make sure that your vote counts. Make sure that whoever is in the White House knows that you put them there, and whoever's not in the White House knows that you kicked them out or put them out or did something. I don't want to be biased. Actually, I do, but I'm going to be nice. All right, my friends, take care. God bless you all.